XX Will Travel is brought to you by Ciderbox.
Ciderbox is a subscription box that delivers hard-to-find American heritage cider to your door.
You can pick the size that works for you, either 3 bottles, a half case, or a full case. Find more information at ciderbox.com, CIDRBOX.com.
Welcome to XX Will Travel, a podcast for independent women travelers. I'm Kathy Polkerbeck.
And I'm Inez Bolina.
And together we are XX Will Travel. So today we are thrilled to have for our guest, Ann Becker, who is a Costa Rica expert.
Yeah.
So after unexpectedly being bitten by Costa Rica on a family vacation in 2005, Ann made a strategic decision to marry her professional planning expertise with her love of Costa Rica and experiential travel. Her longtime skills in creative program design, logistics, and relationship management have been invaluable in developing itineraries and facilitating small group experiential adventures in Costa Rica and neighboring countries. And I also noticed that it says you've lived or worked in Switzerland, France, Costa Rica, and the Philippines.
Some of those I worked in to do consulting, and the others I lived in during my university years, and also my time in Switzerland, which was my first international travel experience. I spent the summer living with a family between my junior and senior year in high school.
Fantastic. So, welcome, Ann, woman of the world.
Yeah.
Fellow woman of the world. And today we're going to talk to Ann about Costa Rica, and Inez also recently took a trip to Costa Rica in November with some unexpected obstacles.
Yes.
So she will be chiming in and sharing her experience as well.
I feel like Ann's going to be the angel on Costa Rica's shoulder, and I'm going to be the little devil. But I'm actually very excited to hear how Costa Rica can be done right, because I just think like everything worked against me on that trip. So then next time that I go, I have all of Ann's amazing trips and strategies.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say next time that you go, because I think it's going to be worthwhile to go another time.
Yeah. How did that journey begin?
It began totally by serendipity. I did go to Costa Rica in 2005 with my husband and our younger son on a family vacation. Never had been there before, never had been in Central America before. And we decided to go to have a more active outdoor vacation, and I was just totally blown away by the country. The people, the beauty of the diversity of all the different microclimates, and the whole spirit of Pura Vida, the unofficial motto of Costa Rica, kind of live in the moment, live on the edge just a little bit more, and just take a deep breath and roll with it. All those things together, 3 months after that vacation, I turned around and took my 78-year-old mom there. She had always wanted to go. My dad was still alive. He wasn't really that interested in going, but he encouraged me to go with my mom. We had a marvelous time, and I came home and I said to my husband, I need to figure out a way to go back. I must figure out a way to go back. I'm completely in love with the country. And so I started looking at what would be the opportunities to do something in Costa Rica, and I figured I probably had about a 2-week window of time. Both of our sons were older. They weren't fully out of school, but they were on their way to being launched. And I had enough flexibility with my consulting practice that I thought, I'm wondering what I can find to do in that 2-week window of time. I looked at volunteer trips, I looked at Spanish immersion programs, and after just digging around a lot and making phone calls and looking at the internet, talking to a lot of friends, I came across a company that was based in Seattle with a Costa Rican infrastructure. And they did really marvelous student trips that included homestays, some volunteer activity, as well as outdoor education, recreation. And at the end of my conversation with one of the principals of that company, he said, why don't you do a trip like this with us? And my initial reaction was, you have got to be kidding me. I spend all my time organizing other people, be it in the meetings with my clients or organizing activities for my family or my extended family. Why do I need to spend more time organizing other people? And he said, well, Ann, you clearly have been bitten by Costa Rica. You clearly have a lot of women friends because they've all said to you, if you come up with anything interesting, let me know. I might want to do it with you. And he said, from your background in designing meetings and consulting with organizations on creative events and all that, you definitely know how to design and you clearly know how to market because you've had your company for a very long time. So I said, okay, I'll think about it. Yeah. Then I thought about it over the weekend. I called a handful of my women friends, talked a little bit more to my husband, and to a person, they all said, Ann, this has your name written all over it. Why don't you do it? That was in July of 2005, and in February of 2006, I led my first women's trip in conjunction with the little company in Seattle, and it was fortunate that I built it as a pilot project because it's kind of funny how little I knew. I mean, I look back at it, and I still work with the same guide, the same local guide who was assigned to me back then, and we both look back at it and we laugh. So it's like ridiculous how little I knew. But fortunately, because I built it as a pilot project, and the majority of women who came on my first trip were people that I either knew directly or through word of mouth, everybody came with the right spirit and the right attitude, and everyone rolled with the punches, and there was a lot of really wonderful bonding there, and people loved the experience. And when I was done, I said to my guide, I said, so what do you think? Would you ever work with me again? And he said, sure, I'd be happy to work with you again, but I don't ever want you to design an itinerary without having me review it. Nobody knows better than the guides who have their feet in every single part of this country. Nobody knows better than they do about how long does it realistically take to get from this destination to that destination. How long and how often do you stop for a baño break, a bathroom break, and how long does it take for 13 or 14, 15 people to actually use the one bathroom that's available then? So he and I have worked together ever since.
Yeah. So you've been then traveling, I would say, annually to Costa Rica since 2005, more or less?
Yes, yes. But now, in the last several years, I've traveled there probably 4 times a year.
Okay.
And I now have a very, very deep network of friends and contacts and colleagues. And every summer, our summertime, I go to Costa Rica exclusively with a longtime friend of mine who's come on all my trips. And we go with my guide on a scouting trip that I've put together to research all the locations that I am interested in using. Not for the coming year. For instance, in a month, I'm going to Costa Rica to already do the scouting and the research for my annual women's trip that will be in February of 2019.
Oh, wow.
So I work a year and a half out. I'm always there for the women's trip in February of every year. This coming up will be my 13th consecutive women's trip. I usually do another trip, either a co-ed Spanish cultural immersion trip or a custom trip at some other point during the year. And then I'm off in there in December for about a week to 10 days. This year I'll be there in October because I'm going to go to a conference there on sustainability that I'm really interested in. So I'm there 3 or 4 times a year.
Wow. Has it changed a lot since your first time there?
On the one hand, what hasn't changed are the spirit and the joie de vivre of the people, the pura vida. Like Costa Rica frequently gets touted as like the happiest country in the world or one of the most happiest countries in the world. And, I think that's very subjective, and it doesn't mean that the country is perfect, not by a long shot. But in general, there's a warmth and there's an openness and there's an attitude of, let's just take it as it comes. That to me hasn't changed. What has changed since I've been there, I think, when I first went, I was always interested in building a meaningful volunteer activity into my small group travels. And in the beginning, I actually had trouble reaching a common understanding with the people I was working with about what meaningful volunteer work was. So while we did activities, the activities were a little bit more of, let us demonstrate to you what we know about a particular kind of expertise, and then you can try it. So we first went to an organization of women that made recycled paper, and then they recycled the paper, or once they recycled the paper, they made like little books and stationery and things from the paper that they then sold. A very worthwhile endeavor, taking that paper and making it out of banana leaves or whatever. So the first year, they really demonstrated that to us, and then we each made something with them. When I went back, I said, let's do something here, but I really want it to be volunteer work where we work with you on doing something that would be beneficial to your organization. And at first, the women didn't quite understand, and then I said, looking around at their space, that, you've got this space. It's wonderful. What are 3 things around here that you just say you never have time to do? And they looked at me and they go, oh, now we get it.
Right.
We would love to repaint the outside of the building. We would love to spray wash our windows. We would love to just reorganize these bookshelves. We would love to paint a mural on this wall. So those were things that they said they needed to get done. So our activity that year became that kind of work. Since then, I really think a lot of organizations have come to a much better understanding about how to work with volunteers. There's a much more immediate response of, we need to first find out what it is the community or the group needs, and then we need to identify the people that actually want to work in collaboration with a group of volunteers who come. And so our projects since then have been very meaningful, from planting a garden at a rural health center to repainting a building in a small rural community to make it fun and lively and attractive for the students who are going to come there and learn more about computers. It's different things like that I think so that's changed significantly.
I like that, because it sounds like you're doing things that impact the lives of people, but it's not like, hey, we're going to have American high schoolers come teach you English for a week and then leave.
Right.
So,
right. We very much work in concert with the community and what it is the community wants and needs, and it's a real collaborative effort that way. And we're able to, last year we, not completely, but we refurbished a greenhouse at a school, and we helped with the planting once we had painted, and we worked with parents and we worked with the students, and a few months later the local coordinator sent pictures of all the plantings now, in full bloom, the various vegetables, and now they have enough from those plantings to actually use the vegetables regularly in the lunchtime meals that are prepared for the students at the school.
That's awesome.
So we're seeing impact, we're feeling impact, and we're doing it in a fun, very collaborative way that means something to us, but we know it means something to the community as well. So that's been a significant change. The other thing is that in a lot of areas, there's much more activities that meaningfully involve local people. So I would say that it's easy to go to Costa Rica and see the diverse microclimates, the volcanoes, the ocean, the rivers, do zip lining, do rafting. It's very easy because Costa Rica is full of those kind of activities, and they are in a lot of ways very important to developing their tourism infrastructure. But what I'm seeing is the engagement of people who live in a small community and maybe realize now that they could actually, in their home, convert one or two of their rooms into house a small hostel or into a very small B&B, serve breakfast or potentially serve meals, and that might attract people who want to travel a little bit more off the beaten path. I'm seeing a lot more of those kind of activities, which have always appealed to me. I'm also seeing in a city like San Jose, where a lot of people from North America historically have said, not a very interesting city, not much going on there. I feel very differently. I feel like in the last decade or so, what we're seeing in San Jose is also the development of much more locally generated activities. In San Jose, there's now a whole area, Escalante and Barrio Dent and Barrio Amon, where we're seeing growth of a lot of small restaurants by local entrepreneurs cooking not just traditional foods, but also cooking much more with local ingredients, creativity, reasonably priced. A lot of young people opening restaurants. A company in Costa Rica and San Jose in particular called Chapecletes that's really about promoting sustainability, that has organized over the years efforts to encourage biking rather than just car transportation, because San Jose has a huge issues with traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Huge issues with traffic. And so I see a lot more locally generated activities and excitement about those kind of activities in the country.
So you mentioned restaurants. So where are your recommendations? Where should people go for a good meal? And then I have a follow-up question.
Okay. I'm one for encouraging people to eat in the little local sodas. So sodas, a little often family-owned restaurant in a small town where the food is extremely local and usually quite traditional. Refrescos, which are delicious, freshly made fruit drinks, either with water or milk. Casados, which is a Costa Rican dish of a little bit of everything, so usually chicken or beef or fish with tortillas, rice and black beans, some fried plantains. It's traditional but healthy, well-rounded meals. I love those kind of places and opportunities. And again, as I said, in San Jose, looking out for these small, newer restaurants. Like there's one in San Jose that I love in Barrio Escalante called Manos en la Maza, where a woman who's a good friend of mine owns it, and she creates really delicious, yummy food, very natural ingredients. Her breads are unbelievable, even though Costa Rica is much more you think of it much more as a tortilla-dominated country. She makes the most incredible breads, the freshest of sandwiches. I'm not a big hamburger eater. She makes the most delicious, healthy hamburgers with very, very fresh vegetables, just delicious food. So those are the kind of places that I recommend that people give it a try.
And Inez. So Inez had a different experience in Costa Rica.
Yes.
But I recall you weren't particularly wowed by the food.
No, not particularly, but let me try to think. I did love the refrescos. Like anything that had to do with fruit, I was all about.
For sure.
Because it actually tasted like fruit, and it reminded me of all the great produce and fresh things we had we just have in Latin America in general. And I love the breakfast. Yeah. With gallo pinto. And usually black beans and eggs. So that was all about. I think I did have some of the meals in the sodas, and that was fun. I think what ended up happening with me, though, is I was first in La Fortuna, which is very touristy heavy, and then we'll go into detail later as to why I had to change my entire trip, but I ended up in Malpaís Santa Teresa, which is kind of a very hippie beach town that's been invaded by both Germans and Argentinians.
Oh.
So the food, I actually managed to have really great meals in a few of the places there. They were mostly, though, restaurants owned by expats, and it was incredibly expensive. Like, that was mostly the impression I ended up getting was that if I had to eat well, it was going to cost me a fortune. And so, yeah, I mean, I had like good fish tacos, I remember, but I guess nothing wowed me. And I think just for the price, I mean, I'd been told Costa Rica was expensive, but I don't think I fully like understood what people meant by that until I was there, because I think it can kind of come with a bit of a sticker shock. I was expecting, like, let's say rural U.S. prices, but it's more like Chicago prices. I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
I have to say that although I'm going to the Nicaragua Peninsula to explore some places in July, I don't typically take my groups to towns that are so expat dominated. And so it's not surprising to me that you found the prices to be as high as they were. It's because of the clientele that they cater to. I think if you were to have explored a few places that are a little bit more off the beaten path, I think you would have found a broader range of options and a broader range of price points.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. Inez.
Yes.
What prevented you from exploring more off the beaten path?
Yes, I want to hear this, Inez. I want to know where you were originally going to go and then where you ended up.
I think, okay, this is going to be a bit of a long story, so bear with me. Because I first need to explain to people what my psychological state was when I went to Costa Rica.
Okay.
Which was, I had planned it, for several months, but it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the apocalyptic 2016 election. Not only did that affect me for many reasons that, I've probably talked about in the podcast already. But at the time that Trump got elected, and I was fearing pretty much for my life, I got dumped by a dude I was seeing. I was having huge drama with work to the point where I ended up quitting and then having to beg for my job back because Trump got elected. It was not a great month for me at all. And all I wanted to do, and I'm like, I have this trip to Costa Rica planned. I can forget all about this. I can relax and regroup. I, plan to go to La Fortuna for a couple of days which is kind of like, I guess, in the middle of the country, more or less. In any case, it was more to do kind of hiking, right, and rainforest, looking at rainforest stuff, animals and that. And then I was going to go to the Caribbean side, and I had planned out like where I was going to stay in terms of the hostel, and then for the final week there, I was going to splurge and get a room in a very nice boutique hotel that my most bougie friend from Peru had recommended, called El Camaleón, because I just wanted to give me that
Also
day.
on the Caribbean side then?
Yeah, but it was
where? Near Cowito or near Puerto Viejo?
So the hostel part was near Puerto Viejo. What's the name? I'm guessing it was I don't know. All my stoner friends recommended that particular place. So, but then Le Camaleón, it was a boutique hotel, maybe an hour away from that. So it's basically located in a place where a little bit secluded in the sense that it's not on a town and it's not anywhere specific. It just kind of has its own beach and things like that. So my second day in Costa Rica, I get on a van to go to this national forest that has hanging bridges. And the guide...
By Fortuna.
Yeah. And the guide and the van driver and I were just making small talk, and they were wondering what I was going to do. And I happened to mention that I was later going to go to the Caribbean side. And that's when the van driver tells me there's a huge storm coming. And so,
not just any storm.
No. It was a tropical storm that was turning into Hurricane Otto, which was the first hurricane to ever land on Costa Rica shores in recorded history. And the last time they had a tropical storm was in 1871 or something crazy like that. So this was not supposed to happen in Costa Rica, and in fact, hurricane season was supposed to be over because it was during Thanksgiving weekend that I went. So this means that, climate change is real and all that kind of stuff. And it was not something I had even planned for or expected or even worried about. So after the tour, I looked online to make sure that the van driver wasn't somehow exaggerating, because I figured on the Caribbean side I'd have to deal with storms or rainy weather anyway. And that's when I realized kind of the hurricane aspect. So I had to change everything in my trip, which meant that I lost a ton of money, because some places gave me some money back, but most of them were just like, I'm sorry, like it's in our terms of agreements, which is fair. I figured I'd ask just in case, but I wasn't expecting to get it back. I had to change my ticket, and just not really wanting to kill myself with wondering where to go, I decided to go to Malpais in Santa Teresa, because a good friend of mine had been there for a yoga retreat for several months, and she had loved it. So I just headed over there and figured I was safe. But then it turns out that Hurricane Otto, I don't know if it's just it changed its trajectory or was just so powerful enough that it was actually going to cut through the entire country. And they couldn't quite be sure, but it said it could either die kind of in the middle, or it could just actually regain strength once it hit the Pacific.
Whoa.
So that means at this point I was stuck, because it was going to happen within the next 24 to 48 hours, and what the government was telling people was actually to just not go on the roads, not try to flee, not anything. I will plug in and say that the Costa Rican government was very well prepared and was keeping everyone very informed, which I found to be very impressive. So all I could do was really stay there. I was staying at a backpackers hostel, and I remember just knocking on the walls to see if they were concrete or if it was wood, and it was obviously completely hollow and wood, and I'm like, we are for sure going to die if this hurricane comes. It was awful, because we really didn't know if it was going to hit or not, where it would hit. It seemed like every hour there was something different, which meant that I was not relaxing one bit at any point. The weather was crappy. It wasn't rainy, but it was just gloomy all the time. And the day it actually finally touched on Costa Rica, it ended up going further north, right. So near the border, right between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Yeah. So at
south of the border.
South of the yeah. But at least we were safe, except for the fact that there was an earthquake off the Pacific Nicaraguan coast that day, which I kind of felt where I was staying in Malpais, Santa Teresa, and we were under tsunami warning for half an hour. So that was maybe day 4 of my week-long vacation, and by then I was done. I just did not want to be there. I had spent my entire time stressed out, looking at Twitter and news to make sure I wasn't in danger, in a panic. Everyone in the hostel had to buy, canned goods in case we were there. I was spending money left and right. And not even the beach weather was that great. And maybe I may have had fun the last 2 days, but by then it's it was just ruined. I felt I had spent an entire month just in extreme high anxiety because of all the political issues in the States and all of my personal issues. And the fact that even my vacation was not I couldn't just emotionally let go on my vacation just made it worse. I think if it had been another time in my life,
so sorry.
So sorry. I would have found it as an adventure and had fun with it. But at that point, I just did not.
The final straw.
Yeah.
Right. So the universe is laughing.
Oh yeah. I did something to piss off some god. So that's why. And I told Ann this before. It's I did have a terrible time there, but it was almost due to something. It was almost out of both my control and out of Costa Rica's control.
Right.
Everyone in Costa Rica was very friendly, and things worked the way they were, and with all the changes and arrangements I had to make, it was so easy to get that done. I kept thinking, if I had been in Nicaragua during a hurricane, I would have been way more in a panic, because I know Nicaragua's government isn't as stable or as rich or as, have their shit together as much as Costa Rica's does, and at least there I felt as safe as I could be, but I'm still in a hurricane,
right.
Right.
But, and such a strong tourism infrastructure.
Yeah.
Compared to probably Nicaragua. Yeah.
I mean, the roads are kind of, they go back and forth because of the geography in terms of how curvy they are, but everything seemed well paved. up to a point, and then like it gets bumpy. But I'm saying like having traveled
Everything
extensive.
seemed well paved. I think that's the first time I've ever heard somebody say that about all the Costa Rican roads.
I think it's more because I've traveled extensively in Latin America. I just know how bad roads can be, and like Costa Rica was not in the top 5 of terrible roads. It was like it was like more on the better side, but then every once in a while it would start to get muddy and bad. Yeah. So anyway, so that was.
I'm glad you have the perspective, though, that maybe the extenuating circumstances, as well as the contrast between what you had hoped for and what you got, rather than just saying, "Oh, I would never ever go to Costa Rica again."
Right.
Because I think it's worth another try.
But how long did it take you to get that perspective?
It took me a while. I mean, while I was there, I'm just like, I hate it here. I don't understand why anyone would want to come. And I remember just thinking, like, God, I wish I was closer to San Jose so I could just go back. Like, I'd rather just, like, consider it a loss and be at home in Chicago instead of staying here. But now that I'm kind of further away from it, it's like at least I came back with a cool anecdote, and I can see Costa Rica's strengths too, you know, like kind of everything I'm saying now, which is that people might not have been as accommodating with me changing everything. I could always count on them to be punctual and on time, which is not the usual case in most of Latin America. And it was definitely like beautiful. I just think, and I wish I could have focused more on the beauty,
you
but I'm
in
like,
the space to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's ironic that you were in the heart of nature in terms of like weather events, but but couldn't enjoy what was around you, the natural beauty around you.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, what you said on several reasons, but, you know, I think now of what else, the question you asked me, Kathy, about what else has changed since I've started going there. And I would say that I don't think there's going to be a hurricane every year, but I do think that the weather patterns have changed in Costa Rica the same way we're seeing changing weather patterns in other parts of the world. I mean, I know that there was a time where a lot of properties would say, oh, we're really going to start to get busy as of Thanksgiving. And actually, now they're not seeing that much busyness over Thanksgiving because, at least on the Pacific side, the rainy season is extending a little bit longer. I know a lot of times now where the rainy season can actually extend into January, and I don't mean the most torrential rains every second, but when I first started going, again, you would see the rainy season starting to slow down dramatically to the point where a lot of tourism picked up again in the November month, and now people are a little bit more reticent in that regard.
I actually found it very difficult to figure out for November where was the best place to go, and maybe it is because due to changing weather patterns, it seemed like everyone on forums contradicted themselves, and they would say like, I was in the Caribbean in November and it was perfectly sunny, and then but someone else would say no, like it was torrential downpour, and then people would give different dates for rainy seasons for the Pacific, and I ended up just kind of having to choose almost blindly. Like I couldn't really come to a conclusion with any of the info.
I think that November is one of those shoulder months, and oftentimes you can find really nice weather on the Caribbean side in the month of November, while you still might find more rainy on the Pacific side. But the bottom line is that you can't think of the rainy season as just as, oh, it's going to be torrential downpours for X number of months. Sometimes they're heavier, sometimes they're not. The Caribbean in general gets more rain than the Pacific does, so it's a little bit unpredictable at that time of year. But I don't want to say that during the dry season, oh, that means there's no rain. You know, because that's a fallacy as well.
It's interesting to look at it in that perspective, because unlike our current president, we are not climate change deniers.
Nor am I.
Nor is Ann. Just the fact that like wine growing regions are moving north. Like now Canada is kind of, the Okanagan Valley is a destination. That's the big one I think that I've really noticed. Wally Nez was in Costa Rica. I was having like a balmy 65-degree winter in Chicago.
We had pretty much a balmy winter all winter long.
Yeah. So, like, hey, Chicago might be like the next Miami in a few years. So, I remember going out for my birthday in November, and it was like 70 degrees outside. Take that, deniers.
Yeah. I think it would have probably been a different experience for you if there hadn't actually been the hurricane. If it had just been intermittent rain, you might have looked at it differently. I mean, I don't know, given that where your state of mind was, but my guide, whom, again, I've known now for a very long time, I think he has the best attitude about the rain. You know, he just says, there's no rainforest without the rain. Yeah. And it's absolutely true. And I oftentimes really love being in Costa Rica during what some people call the beginning or the middle of the rainy season, because there's just so much greenery.
Yeah.
There's so much greenery. You're seeing different kind of plants. Often the animals might be more active. Also, right after there's been a really big downpour, all of a sudden the animals and the insects and the birds are very, very, very active because they're coming out from underneath the rain, and there's new fruit that's available on this tree or this bush or whatever. So there are times when I just really, really love the rainy season. But I know on my first women's trip, it rained almost every single day. And again, I offered it out there as a pilot project, and we rolled with it. But when you're there for a limited amount of time, and the rain is prominent and dictating kind of what you cannot do and what you can do, it's challenging. Because you want to make the most of every second you've got. And
to an extent, at least before the whole hurricane thing hit, I was kind of ready for it. I've lived in Panama for a year, so I'm kind of aware that even with rainy season or with these shoulder seasons, it usually means like rain in the afternoon or rain in the
early morning.
Yeah, and that's kind of when you go and like grab a beer. So I was very willing to go with the flow, but yeah, just a hurricane was just like too much for me in my state. I'm like, this is
right.
So.
And there were a couple of small towns, Biaguas was one of them, that were completely destroyed by the hurricane, completely. And one thing that was heartening after that is that there's a few of the locals in town that organized the volunteer activity, but also organized a GoFundMe campaign. I know I contributed a couple of times because everybody was just so concerned for this town and did whatever it was they could to help rebuild the town.
Yeah, even after the hurricane hit, even in our neck of the woods, like there were stores already with signs saying like, you can donate to victims of Hurricane Otto here. So that was really nice.
I mean, it's kind of like the whole country responded. It's a very small country, and it was a real devastation that the whole country felt. Yeah. Even though it only hit in one little small area, the whole country, I think, really, in its own way, rallied around those communities.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's heartening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Kathy, can we talk about how amazing Ciderbox is?
Ciderbox? What's Ciderbox?
Oh, let me tell you. Ciderbox is a subscription service that sends heritage American cider to your door.
To your door?
Yes, and you can choose either 3 bottles, 6 bottles, or a whole case.
So what are some of the benefits of ordering Ciderbox?
Ooh, well, there's the spiritual one because it's delicious and it will brighten your day. It's also gluten-free, so for all those people that preferred their things without gluten. It also helps the world. Ciderbox is proud to support the American Farmland Trust in their mission to save the land that sustains us by protecting farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. And a donation is made to the American Farmland Trust for every Ciderbox sold.
Plus, you can get a discount when you use the promo code XXWillTravel.
So make sure to check it out at ciderbox.com, CIDRBOX.com.
So you have recently expanded your tours into countries surrounding Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Panama. Why did you decide to do this? What made you want to do this?
I think I decided to do it because every year for my women's trips, I design a unique itinerary, and it has the same values. In other words, we always start in Costa Rica. We always have a 2-day, 2-night homestay and some volunteer activity. I maximize interaction with local people, local communities, and there's always a lot of outdoor education as well as recreation. But I'm into, and I love scouting for new locations and doing creative designs that I think would appeal to people. And so I just got really interested in, okay, so what if one year I ended the trip in Granada, Nicaragua? What if it was a time frame where we could coincide with the International Poetry Festival that is held in Granada each February? So I scouted there with my guide and with a friend and decided, okay, I can figure out how to do this. And that was very well received, and I really enjoyed doing it. Another year I said, Panama City has an enormous amount to offer. The canal, but way beyond the canal. It's a community that actually in a lot of ways is quite different than what one finds in Costa Rica. And people could fly home from Panama City the way people could fly home easily from Managua. So I did Panama City. And then I've always been intrigued by the archipelago that many people refer to as San Blas, but actually is referred to officially as Gunayala. It's a semi-autonomous community in Panama. I thought, I'm going to check this out and see if logistically it would be possible for us to go there, but then end up in Panama City so people could fly home from Panama City. And so we did. We stayed on a beautiful, beautiful island, small enough to walk across in about 3 minutes, it happened to coincide with the 90th anniversary celebration of the independence of the Gunayala. So great in terms of local culture, local traditions. So that's just, it's part of how I want to expand, because it's areas that I'm interested in. But also I think even though Costa Rica is contiguous to Nicaragua and to Panama, each of those countries has very different cultures, has very different histories. Panama and Nicaragua have both been through major civil wars within the last generation, or slightly more than the last generation. Costa Rica's had democracy and stability since the late 1940s. So there's a lot of differences in these countries that I think are worth exploring and also worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Costa Rica definitely has a different feel than Panama. Like having lived in Panama, and it's no, I felt Costa Rica to actually be like way more chill, in terms like or at least maybe the whole pura vida thing. Like I just found them to be super happy.
I think that the other thing though is that Costa Rica, the tourism industry is huge.
Yes.
And when the country made a decision in the 1970s to actually establish a lot of national parks, I mean, more than 25% of the land of Costa Rica is national parks, it made a decision to really invest in tourism and train a whole new generation of people in tourism. So that is a significant difference from Panama has incredible natural resources, so does Nicaragua. But Panama has Panama City, which is the commercial capital of Central America. Panama's had the canal for a very long period of time. It wants to promote tourism. It does promote tourism, but it hasn't been developed as an industry to the same degree as it has as Costa Rica has done it. And Nicaragua is it's much newer to the tourism. Nicaragua is the second poorest country in all of this hemisphere behind Haiti. So it's doing things to develop its ecotourism infrastructure, but it's just not there yet in the same way. It's coming. It's definitely coming. Not just Granada, not just Leon, two dramatically different cities, which I think are both really wonderful. But in February, I'm taking my group to the island of Ometepe, the island of two volcanoes. in Nicaragua, where many local Nicaraguans go and spend time. Many young people have gone there. It's an island not just known for relaxing, not just known for its two volcanoes, but also its incredible petroglyphs and the archaeological ruins that are there. And it's an island that I felt like I can weave this into the time and the structure of one of my trips. I've also been to the wonderful Corn Islands on the Caribbean side of the country. Incredibly beautiful. But I just decided in my scouting work that there's a lot of extra logistics involved in taking a group to the Corn Islands. And when all is said and done, I don't really have enough time to do that in the way they would want to do it. So I guess the plus for me is I've been able to explore those areas in my scouting trips. The downside is that I haven't been able to weave in every place that I've explored always in a small group trip in the amount of time that's available.
Yeah, I'm actually very intrigued by Nicaragua, and I have so many friends that, or not so many, but I have like several good friends that have been there, and they all come like raving back. So since I've been having a bit of like a love affair with Central America lately, that might be my next stop.
Sure. Happy to talk further.
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas.
In terms of like Costa Rica, though, what are the locations that you would recommend to someone who's going there for the first time?
The highlights.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have to say that for me, I just want to say that I am not first and foremost a beach person.
Okay.
And if somebody wants to go to Costa Rica and spend virtually all their time on a beach, I can make some recommendations, but that's not my personal preference, and I don't organize my trips so that all the time is spent on a beach, because I feel like that's something that someone can figure out how to do pretty well with the internet or whatever. So for me personally, I mean, I love all of Costa Rica, so don't get me wrong, but my personal passion is first and foremost the Osa Peninsula. Which is the southwesternmost peninsula of Costa Rica. When we went on my family trip, the woman that was helping us put the trip together said, "You're going for a long enough time, I really want to get you to the Osa." And that just stuck in my mind. So even though I knew almost nothing about Costa Rica at that time, I said, okay, so whatever you put together for us, make sure we go to the Osa. And I really loved it. And for me, there are many reasons why I love the Osa, but the top of my list is Corcovado National Park, which is one of the most biologically diverse regions in the world. You can find almost 2.5% of the world's biodiversity in Corcovado. Wow. I have visited Corcovado either in day trips or overnight trips, somewhere between now 30, 35, 40 times, and I never ever get tired of it. It is stunningly beautiful. The diversity of wildlife is incredible. You see a lot of endangered wildlife, like spider monkeys, squirrel monkeys, tapirs, that you wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to see very often in a lot of other places. That doesn't, I mean, I love the wildlife, but the spectacular beauty of the trees, the huge trees with their incredible buttresses and their really wavy, curly vines and roots and all that is something that I just love. I never tire of the Osa, and particularly that park.
And the scuba diving is supposed to be amazing over there.
The scuba diving I can't speak to this firsthand. I'm a snorkeler, I'm not a scuba diver. But there are many, many people that love to go scuba diving, particularly around Caño Island, which is a biological reserve about 45 minutes off the coast of the Osa, the Pacific coast of the Osa. I also really love the area that's inland. It's a newer park. It's Parque Nacional Los Quetzales.
Okay.
So it's a park that is more cloud forest rather than rainforest. It's an area near one of the best coffee growing regions of the country, in an area that is less explored, less known. It's where I've taken my groups a few times to do homestays and volunteer activity with a wonderful locally owned company called Santos Tours, run by 2 young Costa Ricans who put the project together as a result of work that they did in their post-high school studies. And amazingly beautiful, very local, and just a little bit more off the beaten path. And then I love the Caribbean side of the country, particularly around Cahuita, which is the national park that was established to protect the marine reserve many years ago.
Is that where you can see the turtle eggs hatching, or is that a different?
You can see turtle eggs hatching in a lot of different parts of the country at different times of the year, because there are 4 different types of turtles, and they have different cycles. So you're probably thinking of Tortuguero.
Yes, that's
Tortuguero is on the far northern Caribbean coast, and Tortuguero is a place that in the months of July and August, September and October, you have a great opportunity to see turtle nesting and turtle release. I've actually seen turtle nesting going on in Tortuguero in the month of July. I saw a turtle release on the southern Pacific side of the country, not quite as far as the Osa, but in the Dominical Uvita area. I saw that in July, where the turtles actually were, the hatchlings were being released and went into the ocean, not just a year or 2 ago in July, which was also one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Yeah, I really wanted to go, but it seemed like, I guess, the season was over by the time.
Yeah, but just seeing a turtle lay its eggs, and we saw it about midnight, and to watching it lay the eggs and watching the trance that the turtle's in and all that, and then we saw the turtle actually, after it finished laying the eggs, it moved on its flippers to then cover the nest. It's an out-of-body kind of experience. It's really incredible. And everybody, I think I saw it in 2007 with my husband and 6 other couples on a trip that I had organized. The next morning, it was all we could talk about. And people who were with us on that trip, they still referred to it as one of the most incredible observations of nature in action that they've ever experienced. So it's a very moving kind of experience.
It is. I did that in Mexico, and it's weirdly hypnotic.
It is, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because it's the turtle who's also in almost like a hypnotic trance, but you feel the same way. Very much so.
Right, and releasing the little turtles and not having any control over where they're going.
But they do have an instinct, right?
Yeah.
They don't have any control, but on the other hand, they know that they're going towards the ocean.
Yeah.
To watch that happen is really pretty incredible.
It is. It is incredible.
Yeah. But I think that's also can be said about, I've seen so much wildlife in Costa Rica. To watch these instances of nature in action. So once we saw the web of a beautiful golden orb spider, and the spider had captured in its web a blue morpho butterfly. I don't know if you saw any of those butterflies. They look like they're brilliantly blue or iridescently blue.
Okay.
And it was with its wings wide open, but captured in the net by the spider, was really incredible. Yeah. Or I've seen 2 tapirs, which are the largest land mammal in Central America, in the Central American rainforest. One racing after the other, males in the water and shrieking because they were in competition for a female who was just a little bit ahead of them on the bank of the river. So to actually experience that was extraordinary, just extraordinary. Or to watch a little agouti. The agouti is actually a rodent, not huge, but has a butt that's rounded and looks a little bit like a bunny, but it's not a rabbit. Not a rabbit, but it doesn't have the tail like a rabbit does. But to actually watching it jumping up and down from a log as it patiently makes its nest in the rainforest, very deliberately up and down, up and down, up and down. to me, those are just extraordinary opportunities to experience nature doing its thing. It's not that everything else isn't wonderful and beautiful, and I'm not in awe of the spider monkey jumping through the rainforest and all that, but to actually kind of experiencing the cycle of life, I think is really an extraordinary experience.
And the tapir thing sounds like one mating ritual that's worse than online dating.
Or is it? I don't know. If I was the female tapir, I'd be very flattered to have these two men just going to war.
Some guy being like, Inez! Inez!
Because I'm just like sitting on a log. I don't even know where they sit. Logs, rocks.
Just swimming away.
Yeah, just swimming away.
They were racing down that river. Yeah. Rio Claro. They were going at it.
At least you know the intentions are clear.
Yeah, there is no question as to what they want.
Absolutely.
So kind of switching gears here, and I'll preface this by saying much love to our lady travel bloggers.
Yes.
We love you, we love you, we love you. But if you if you see a female travel blogger or like a woman in the travel industry, most likely she's blonde, white, and under 30.
Yes.
So I'm having a milestone birthday this year, which I'm not going to reveal. So infer with what you will. 25.
I had a milestone birthday, and I assure you I'm way ahead of you.
Okay. And I had one, and I'm still where it's like, I don't mind talking about it. I turned 35 and decided that I was like close to the crypt. Like, I might as well give up now, which is a terrible like mentality to have. But I'm not going to lie. It hit me really hard, even though I knew it was like BS.
Well,
but
I have mine is a little more milestoney. No, I'm not comparing milestones with you. I'm sorry, it's not a competition.
No. But I'm saying like even the one who has the less of the milestone can still find it trying.
Right.
Yeah.
And we should all be glad we wake up every morning and have the opportunities we do.
I have to say that until I was 39, that was my attitude. But from that point forward, I have been. We need to celebrate these milestones.
Yes.
We need to celebrate these milestones.
Yes. So I feel like, and maybe it's just me, Inez, chime in if you agree or disagree, but I feel like those women under 30, the blonde white ladies, are the travel bloggers, and in the travel industry, those are the people we see. And after you reach a certain point, travel either becomes dangerous or seen as frivolous or why are you doing that? You should be focusing on your career. What do you think about, how do we make women over 30, more underrepresented women, more visible in this arena?
In the blogging arena?
Or just in the travel industry?
Just in the travel industry. It seems like everything is geared towards the very young millennial, while, in all honesty, women of all ages travel.
And have money to travel.
Yeah.
I would say it's interesting. I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I actually think that women's travel is growing.
Yes.
Dramatically growing. And I think that a lot of women have responded to my trips over the years for several reasons. First of all, my trip is open to anyone, any age, and I have had literally from age 30 up to 76 or 77. I'm a firm believer that travel, and it's a state of mind. I mean, I have a long list of what you can expect, what you don't expect, and that. But one of my most active participants who's coming again this year, she's 76 or 77 now, and she's going to leave the rest of us in the dust.
Yeah.
She usually does. So I think that for the women who have traveled with me, they've come for several reasons. First of all, when I started doing this, honestly, I was in my early 50s. I had a lot of friends and colleagues who were in the same general age range, and there were various reasons for coming. One was, I just got divorced. I can finally do something for myself now. I'm going to do this trip. Another one was, I have kids. My kids are old enough that I have the flexibility to take 10 days and do a trip like this. Either the financial flexibility, the schedule flexibility, or whatever. Another one was, I have a partner. My partner doesn't travel like this, but I am interested in this kind of travel. I want to do this because my partner's fine with it, and this is something that I want to experience. So I had all of those different kind of things as reasons why women wanted to travel with me. I've always thought that I've always had fewer women in their 30s who traveled with me, but I've always just assumed it's because where many of them are in life. It's not that they don't want to do this kind of travel, it's that they don't feel that they have the flexibility. Maybe they don't have the flexibility right now, either from a financial standpoint or from a family standpoint, or there are other ways that they want to travel that are not these kind of, small group trips. I've had some women who come travel with me just because they do want to do this kind of travel. They don't want to do it completely on their own.
Right.
But the idea of coming with a small group is really appealing to them. Other women say, I just love the idea of going on a trip where someone else has put it all together.
Right.
All I have to do is show up.
Yeah.
I understand that because my husband and I often do small group hiking trips and other kind of trips where I am ecstatic just to show up, and tell me where I need to go to get from point A to point B. Tell me my 2 options for dinner. I understand those kind of things. So I don't know that it's an instance of where there are fewer women who are doing this travel, or if it's just that they're not doing the blogging.
Right.
I mean, I know there's a blog and a travel site called Roaming Boomers. There's another Travel Past 50. There's another Gypsy Nesters. There are several that are out there. There's a woman named Layla traveling on the road, or I can't remember exactly, but she's in my general age range. So there are bloggers, but and they're definitely catering to different markets.
Sure.
So I don't know if I can say a lot more than that. Or if that's helpful to you.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
And for me, I just have to say that the women who come on my trips, social media has been great for getting my brand out there more, incredible, making a lot of connections and everything like that. But social media isn't often the deciding tool about whether someone chooses to travel with me or not. The deciding tool is still, for most people, I've heard about your trips through so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so, and, you do a monthly newsletter, and I love your monthly newsletter now, and finally, after 4 or 5 years, I'm finding that your trip coincides with when I can travel with you. They're hearing from me or about me through several different routes, but still a word of mouth, or the fact that they receive my newsletters and that the timing finally coincides. I have a woman coming with me in February. She's never traveled with me before. We've been in contact about my trip for 11 years.
Oh, wow.
Finally, when I sent my newsletter in February, March, saying what my dates were for 2018, she said, I am so excited. She said, I don't have to teach during the winter quarter. I can finally go on your trip.
Yeah.
So that's what I've found.
And part of your journey, I love that it started with you taking your mom.
It was great.
Yeah.
And then actually, my dad's no longer alive now, but I was able to take both my parents before my dad died.
Yeah.
So that was also really special.
Yeah.
Very special.
Yeah.
It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
It is.
And I've been with both my kids. My husband comes with me at least once a year, and I have a lot of Costa Rican friends and colleagues, but actually now my whole family has a lot of Costa Rican friends and colleagues. And every year, although the Trump dynamics may unfortunately be changing some of this, every year one or more of my colleagues has been able to come visit in Chicago. So they also have gotten to know Chicago and my family on my grounds, not just us getting to know them on their grounds. And that's been really wonderful.
Right, which isn't that the point of traveling?
Yeah.
The relationship building.
It's all about building bridges.
Yeah.
Building bridges one person at a time.
Exactly.
And I will say, this just reminds me that when I was in Costa Rica, I did find it striking that there were many women who are traveling alone, which isn't necessarily in itself weird, but that they were actually kind of in their 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. And those were usually the people I gravitated towards to and talked to when I was like on bands or on boats. And yeah, for a lot of them, it wasn't, it was maybe their first time in like Latin America. And this is kind of the place where they felt it was, it was like a good way of starting with the region.
A lot of people start there.
Yeah. And one of my favorite people that I met during the trip was a Spanish woman named Marina, who was maybe like 1 or 2 years away from retirement, but her husband had passed away maybe a couple of years ago. And she was like, well, now what I do with my free time is travel. Right. And she was staying in the hostel with us. She was like just one member of the like young backpacking crowd. We took her to go see reggae one night and she loved it. That's and great. Yeah, and it reminds you like, you have the freedom to do this. Like, no one is stopping you from being like a retiree who goes out clubbing with the young people.
Right. Especially now that many of us are living longer, right? And are, healthy and all that. But there are other people that I think maybe they were afraid initially, and if they don't want to do a small group thing, because I don't think small group things are for everybody, Costa Rica is also a place where one can go for an extended period of time to house sit. Or stay in a B&B or whatever. And if you want to go there and stay for a while, then you venture out to the community to do your local shopping or whatever. Whether you not Spanish, you figure out how you can communicate. And I think that helps build people's confidence. I also work very closely. One of my partners, because I always offer an optional mini Spanish immersion trip before my women's trips, is a small Spanish immersion school outside of San Jose where everybody stays in homestays, and it's just wonderful, very, very, very small group classes and cultural activities. And there are lots of older people that are doing this, that either they want to learn Spanish now, they need to learn some Spanish for their work. It's a safe way to venture out, and they're loving it. And then on the weekends, maybe they'll go explore a beach town, or maybe they'll go to Fortuna to go see Arnal or whatever. So I think there are other outlets. I just don't think that a lot of us who didn't grow up with blogging or whatever, I don't think that's our primary way of communicating. It's not that we're not out there. Right. It's just that we're...
You just don't need the Instagram likes.
Right.
You have other forms of...
Although I like Instagram. I like Instagram.
It's funny to hear you talk about this because I'm like going through my travels in my head, and I remember a couple in Argentina who were retired who were studying Spanish. Just they pick a place and go there for a month and learn Spanish. And I went on a tour in Jordan, and it was a small group tour, and there were 4 other people. And one woman was a single woman in her 30s, and we both looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. Because the 3 other people, Dave, Betty, and Judith, were these, Canadians who were my parents' age. But it ended up being such a great trip, and we had such a cohesive bond that I felt, especially Judith. Judith was in her 70s, and she was a badass. And so I think you're right. I think people are out there. They're just not as out there.
I mean, that's what I found too, Kathy, is that I've had women in their mid to upper 70s, and I've had women as young as 30s, and the bonds and the connections and the learning and sharing that's made across ages is just really wonderful. And a lot of people come away from my trips and they go, the trip was so great in so many ways. And one of the strongest elements of it is I got to know these incredible women. And they're not, they're referring to women in the group, but they're also referring to a lot of the women that they get to know through their homestay experience or just in activities that we do with other local organizations. But this how to build these bridges across ages and across generations is really, travel is a wonderful way to do it.
Yeah, and it's a safe space to do it. And you just encounter people like you would otherwise not go out of your way to meet.
Right.
That's true. Right. I love that.
Right.
Me too.
I love it too.
Yeah.
All right, so you've mentioned you have a trip coming up, or like what is your next trip, I guess? What are your next couple trips?
As I mentioned, I'm going to Costa Rica at the end of July and the beginning of August, and it's a scouting trip, and I'm really excited because, among other things, we're going back to Isla de Chira, which is the largest island in the Gulf of Nicoya. Only about 3,000 people live there, and 10 years ago I took a women's group there because it's a group of women from that island that really recognized first that the island couldn't survive long-term just on the fishing industry, and they began to develop a small rural tourism infrastructure there. They have a wonderful little lodge that we stayed at. Now there's a little bit more going on there, and I'm just excited to go back and return. There are now a couple of Peace Corps volunteers that are helping a number of these groups build up their rural tourism capacity and capability, so I'm very excited about that. And then I am going, as part of that trip, I'm going back to the OSA as well, but I'm going to be exploring with a relatively new organization called OSA Rural Trails, or Caminos de OSA, and it's an organization that is working, again, in these tiny towns not far from where the major towns, major in quotes, towns that have had the oldest lodges, these tiny towns that are adjacent to that, where people are beginning to, again, build or open up a few rooms in their homes for visitors, open up a small restaurant or soda, have some very local businesses. So I'm going to kind of explore some of these smaller towns that I've never been to before, or I maybe have just passed through, to meet some of these people and see whether or not there's an opportunity there to do some of a future women's trip there. And then in October I said I'm going for a conference on sustainability that I'm really excited about. But in February is my 13th annual women's trip, which is a Costa Rica, Nicaragua combo adventure. We are starting in this Los Santos region that I mentioned earlier to do homestays, volunteer work, and do some birding and hiking in Parque Nacional Los Quetzales. And then we're going to wend our way north, stopping in the really wonderful park that is a park that is the only place that's a park in Costa Rica where you have the dry forest meets the rainforest. Ooh. So it's a transitional forest, quite lovely, and often a home to a lot of scarlet macaws, among other things. And then we're going to wend our way into Nicaragua, and I mentioned we're going to be visiting the island of Ometepe, and we'll end up again in Granada, do a nighttime or at dusk visit to the Masaya volcano. Very different kind of experience to visit the volcano at dusk than it is to visit during the daytime. Hopefully coincide again. The Nicaraguans haven't set the final date for this, but hopefully predicted correctly that will coincide again with the International Poetry Festival.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Then, so we'll wrap the trip up there, and then the women will fly home from Managua. I always stay for a few days afterwards to kind of catch my breath, and I'll explore another area of Nicaragua then on my own. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I have 3 spots left on that trip.
Right.
Okay.
So if anybody who hears this podcast is interested, definitely get in touch.
And if you want to know about the name of the park, you have to sign up for the trip.
Yes. Yeah. Is there a deadline that people have to sign up by?
I would say that my trips are usually full by the middle of October.
Okay.
But interest in this trip has been very, very high. So I only take a maximum of 14 women, plus me and plus my guide. So there literally are only 3 spots left.
Okay.
In which case, this trip has the potential of filling early.
Yeah.
Okay. And where can people find more?
And that was not a marketing pitch. That is true.
It's a pretty good. Where can people find more information? Like your website, your Instagram. Like where can they find you?
Yes, they can find me. If they go to my website, it's www.abecker.com. And on the homepage, they'll find the link to all my Costa Rica information. And it'll have the Wonderful Women 13 trip itinerary and details there. They can also find me through my Facebook. My public page is Travel with Ann Costa Rica Experiential Adventures. I'm on Instagram as Travel with Ann, or Travel W Ann, and Twitter as Travel W Ann as well.
Awesome. Great.
All right.
Any of those places.
Well, thanks so much. I will have to say that you speak so beautifully about Costa Rica that I am tempted to go back now. I'm like, there's so much I miss.
Yes.
And I felt it was like gonna be very difficult to convince me of feeling that way. No, it's like it sounds. There's so
Next
much
time
that
you
I
just
miss.
need to call me beforehand so I can help you
Yes.
plan your trip.
Yes, for sure. No more Googling blindly on the internet. I'm just gonna be like,
You can
Ann?
Google. I just want to review your Googles.
So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us all this insight. This was a great conversation. Join Girl Squad Tours in July for a Retreat Yourself weekend in Hot Springs, North Carolina. This all-inclusive weekend getaway includes yoga, guided meditation, nature hikes, soaking in hot springs, campfires, incredible food and wine, and good old-fashioned girls' nights. Visit girlsquadtours.com to sign up today. Enter code GSTWILLTRAVEL to receive 10% off the pay in full option. So if you want to find out more about XX Will Travel, you can visit xxwilltravel.com. We are also on Instagram and Twitter at XX Will Travel. We have a wonderful newsletter curated by our own Inez Bellina.
Yay.
Sign up.
Please, it makes me happy.
Right? And
Yes, you can also sign up for my newsletter via my Facebook page.
Yes. Sign up for Ann's newsletter, like both two wonderful things to look forward to in your inbox, in between all the Viagra ads.
Yeah. You can also sign up to our newsletter on our Facebook page as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Send my Facebook page. Actually, I think you can sign up for my newsletter through my website.
Yes. Just sign up. Just find a way.
Sign up.
And I think that's all for now. Leave us a review on iTunes if you like us. 5 stars.
Yeah.
Put stars in our eyes. And until then, go forth and travel.